With the advent of many subcompact and micro-compact pistols in the handgun market these days, has the Glock G26 been relegated to obscurity? Is it destined to be forever lonely, buried away in a safe with other Glock pistols that have met the same fate, shunned by their masters in favor of a more modern, a more sophisticated weapon, adorned with fanciful stocks and gilded slides cut with curves that only man's imagination can conceive? Is the Glock G26 still viable as a personal self-defense pistol? Is it even relevant anymore? Let's talk about it and let you determine if the Glock G26 should be dropped off of the personal defense radar or not. What shall become of it? What fate lies ahead for the Glock G26? Well, personally, I hope to keep the Glock G26 GEN5 around for quite a while. Compared to what is being introduced in the handgun world today, it has already become a relic. But so have I. And I, like the G26, am not ready to go into the dustbin just yet. In March of 2011, I was in one of my favorite gun stores. Several new Gen 4 Glocks had been introduced, and many gun stores were anxious to rid their inventory of Gen 3 Glock pistols. Because of that, I was able to purchase several new Gen 3 Glock pistols at an excellent price, including a G17, a G19, and a G26. Time passed, and the G26 languished in the safe and remained in an unfired condition, at least by me. Eventually, the G26 was sold along with additional magazines with pinky hangers. At the time of the sale, I never really intended to replace the G26. Time and other pistols passed, and I started considering subcompact pistols again, and a few had drawn my attention. Also, and because Glock had been introducing their Gen 5 models, I felt that the upgrades to existing Glock pistols and new models like the G45, G48, and others warranted another look at their lineup. I am not a Glock fanboy, but I do recognize them for what they are: excellent, plain, and simple tools for self-defense, home defense, target, hunting, and competition. With self-defense being my primary interest, the Glock G48 serves the purpose. However, I find the grip too narrow for my liking, although that was rectified with a slip-on grip adapter. For some reason, I focused in on the Glock G26 GEN5. The G26 GEN5 raised a question mark in my mind. Would the Glock GEN5 G26 be a more than adequate pistol for my needs? With the Gen 3 Glock 26 sold, there was a void in the Glock collection, but that in itself was not enough to justify owning another. I began my decision to purchase a Glock Gen 5 G26 by watching many videos and written reviews available on the World Wide Web. Most, if not all, convinced me that the Glock Gen 5 G26 would be a worthwhile investment, as I had a need for a subcompact pistol, and especially since there had been 20 improvements in Glock pistols since their Gen 3 models. The specifications and dimensions for the Glock Gen 5 G26 are not very impressive and have remained virtually the same throughout the pistol's existence. But there are a few things about the G26 Gen 5 that work for me, and I am going to discuss them. my model, Glock night sights, or GNS, came standard. Night sights are something I have come to appreciate because of their clarity, and not so much for their low light characteristics. I am not a fan of Glock's block and dot polymer sight system, but still have them on a few Glock pistols. The Glock G26 has a short, chunky grip due to the wide staggered 10-round magazines. 3 were provided with the pistol. My pinky finger hangs off of the standard grip, but I installed PacBar XL grip extenders after the first shooting session to alleviate that. The extensions are not so much for gripping the pistol as they are to provide a guide for my hand when pulling the pistol from a holster. The extensions serve as an index of sort for my hand. The Gen 5 G26 comes with grip adapters, of which the large beaver tail adapter was put into place as soon as I received the pistol. I like to get as high on the backstrap as possible, but that sometimes results in my hand briefly interfering with the slide as it travels rearward. Albeit, a slide traveling at speed has much more impact on my hand than vice versa. A beaver tail grip helps to alleviate that problem. The large beaver tail grip adapter lengthens the trigger reach, which is what I need for my fingers to be somewhat properly indexed on the trigger. Even with the large beaver tail grip adapter and magazine extensions installed, I can still effectively conceal the pistol on the body. While I would like a bit more grip length, the wide grip does feel good in my hand, unlike the narrow grip of the Glock G48 with its single stack magazine. My hand just does not feel as if I'm getting the full benefit of gripping the pistol. Overall, I prefer a large gripping surface. The texture of the gripping surface is excellent, with enough texturing to maintain a full grip front, rear, and on the sides. It is a definite improvement over the Gen 3 series. I feel no need to add a grip sleeve or other aid. Front serrations on the trigger guard will never be used by me, but some like to place a finger on the front of the guard, and the front trigger guard serration accommodates that style of shooting. The trigger housing is not as undercut as I would like, which would allow a bit more finger under the trigger guard that results in a bit higher grip on the pistol. The frame, in case you are interested, does not incorporate a rail and is a big plus in my book, as I do not care for rails, unless they can be used to hold a couple of Slim Jim snacks, and, so far, no adapters for Slim Jim snacks are available for any railed firearm. The Glock Gen 5 G26, like other Gen 5 pistols, has no finger grooves on the grip. While finger grooves have never bothered me, I do like the removal of the grooves from this pistol. My fingers, with Glock pistols that incorporate them, lined up with the grooves near perfectly, while some had alignment issues with the finger grooves never matching their finger hold on the pistol. The grip angle remains typically Glock, which forces you to tilt your wrist a bit more forward than what you may be used to with other pistols. With that said, the angle does force your wrist to be more in line with the slide of the pistol. If you have ever fired a Ruger Mark .22 caliber pistol, you will not be a stranger to the Glock grip angle. The grip incorporates a thumb rest on both sides to accommodate left and right-handed shooters. The Gen 5 G26 has ambidextrous slide lock, slide release levers. That is handy for a left-handed shooter, and when firing the pistol, we can for right-handed shooters. While I normally use an overhand method of releasing the slide, I do use the weak hand thumb to press the slide lock and release the slide during combat reloads. In short, I use whatever slide release method works at the time. What I have not experienced yet is the wear on the finish of the slide lock release levers, although I have seen that wear in several Glock Gen 5 G26 reviews. The magazine release button is on the left side by default, but can be changed to the right side if the shooter desires. The grip size accommodates most thumbs to reach the magazine release button without changing the grip on the pistol. At least it does for me. The magazine release button is much larger than that found on the Gen 3 G26. The G26 can, of course, accommodate magazines with larger capacities than the 10-round magazine that comes with the pistol. Field stripping of the Glock Gen5 G26 is the usual for all Glock pistols. Remove the magazine and perform a safety check to ensure that the pistol is unloaded. Point the muzzle in a safe direction and pull the trigger. Pull or push the slide slightly rearward enough to remove tension on the takedown assembly. Pull the takedown assembly down on both sides of the pistol and remove the slide from the frame, after which you can remove the captive dual recoil spring assembly and the barrel. The barrel is the new marksman barrel, whereas the grooves are cut deeper than with previous models. This is supposed to aid in accuracy, and in theory it should, as the deeper grooves provide a better grip on the bullet. Accuracy, however, is still up to the shooter. The barrel at the muzzle end is nicely crowned to protect the muzzle, and supposedly the chamber end provides better support for the cartridge. Only someone who reloads their ammunition could tell me if that is true or not. Traditionally, there was always a slight bulge in the cases at the chamber end of ammunition being shot in standard Glock barrels. It is only a question of whether the bulge is still present on the case with the new barrels, and how much is present. The slide uses Glock's NDLC finish, and is supposed to be superior to previous finishes. Machine work is excellent, and the front of the slide and frame are beveled for ease of holstering and reduced wear in that area. The Gen5 G26 has a 1-pin locking block system rather than a 2-pin locking block system, which I am happy to see, because I have seen some Glock frames crack at the upper pin with the 2-pin system, and which held me off from purchasing Glock pistols after I found out about the issue. While I do not expect Glock pistols to be those that can be passed on to future generations, having a longer life expectancy with my firearms is always a desire. Glock pistols should provide years of service if they are not abused, but the same can be said for any firearm, anything, or anyone. For the first day at the range with the Gen5 G26, I was shooting MagTech 124 grain FMJ fodder for accuracy and function testing. I had no doubts about this ammunition, as I have been using quite a bit of it lately, it seems. For defensive use, I have been relying on Sig Sauer V-Crown 147 grain jacklet hollow point, as this ammunition seems to perform well in all my 9mm semi-automatics, if I do my part. With a silhouette target set at 7 yards, I set about checking out the Glock Gen5 G26. I was not concerned about the pistol. The Glock pistols simply work out of the box. I was more concerned with my performance with the pistol. After initial testing, I went to work on some Mozambique drills, which provides a chance to run some reloads. Now, when I run this drill, I am not looking for groups. I am looking at how the pistol responds when I pick an imaginary spot on the target, center mass, head, shoulder, whatever. It is both a test of my capabilities with the firearm and how well the pistol and I communicate with each other. The night sights helped me out in that department, as I prefer these sights over the usual Glock polymer sights. And with new spectacles, I can actually see the darn thing, as compared to the blurred sight picture of my old Vision. As a side note, this pistol was the last of the G26 pistols equipped with night sights at the vendor from which it was ordered. The other thing that helped me was the slightly beveled magazine well, which makes inserting magazines easier than a mag well with no beveling. The shape of the magazines also help when inserting them due to the slope of the magazine at the feed lips. Of course, the Glock Gen5 G26 incorporates the Glock safety system: trigger safety, firing pin safety, and drop safety. Safety, however, as always, is up to the shooter. The trigger in the Gen 5 models seems to be an improvement over previous triggers, although the trigger characteristics are still Glock. Maintaining strict sight alignment throughout the trigger pull is still essential for accuracy, and I do not feel as if I'm fighting the trigger. Compared to many of the double-action, single-action triggers that I've been pulling lately, the Glock trigger is consistent, and once I found where the break and reset points were on this pistol, my accuracy with the pistol increased. But I am still old, slightly shaky, and putting rounds where I want them takes a bit more concentration on my part. With that said, the Glock G26 never was intended for target work, but placing rounds where you want them with the Glock Gen5 G26 is fully possible if the shooter does their part. The trigger safety plunger has been redesigned for smoother operation. The trigger face is smooth and flat with the integrated trigger safety lever, rather than with the previous serrated and rounded trigger. The trigger pull on this pistol is 6 pounds 6.2 ounces with a 5-pull average, and I expect it to smooth out as the pistol is broken in fully. The trigger, when shooting, does not feel as heavy as what was measured. There is the usual mushy feel as the striker is being fully cocked, and then a clean break. The trigger does feel smoother than on my previous Gen 3 G26, but is still nothing to write home about. Reset is quick and tactile, if you take the time to feel it, and is in its usual spot in the trigger travel. Reloads, as expected, were smooth. This pistol has a little lip at the bottom of the grip that prevents the hand from being pinched during reloading of a magazine. Not that that has never happened to me. Also, the magazine release button is much larger than that found on my previous Gen 3 G26, and that is welcome. Tilt recoil was a bit snappy due to that 3.43-inch barrel, and I had to ensure that I had a firm grip when I pulled the trigger to keep the muzzle rise down. I had to keep resetting my offhand grip, but I have a bad habit of doing so anyway, rather than keeping a constant firm grip. Between the large beaver tail grip adapter and magazine extensions, I did feel that I had full control over the pistol. The Glock Gen5 G26 is as accurate a pistol as I can be with it. I will become more accurate with it the more that I shoot it. I was well pleased with both the initial performances, the pistol and mine. Being a subcompact pistol, the Glock Gen5 G26 can be carried concealed, or however you wish to carry it. The Glock Gen5 G26, like its ancestors, is a wide pistol, but with a slide width of only 1 inch and an overall width of 1.3 inches at the ambidextrous slide lock, it is not wider than most pistols, except for those diminutive micro-compact types that I feel like I'm going to lose my grip on the pistol every time that I shoot it. The Glock Gen5 G26 weighs in at 1 pound 11.1 ounces fully loaded with 10-point-plus rounds of 6-hour B-Crown 147 grain jacketed hollow point ammunition. I have carried the G26 in several holsters that fit several pistols with no issues. The Falco A112 Hawk holster and the Simply Rugged Cuda and Cumberland holsters carry the G26 well, although they were purchased for a Glock G19. I carry just behind the right hip or cross trowel, unless I'm wearing a shoulder holster system, but never appendix. However, any holster that tucks the pistol tight into my body will simply do fine. Note that all of these holsters are intended to carry pistols with longer barrels. The holsters, because they are designed for a longer barreled pistol, actually make the holster more stable in the waistband, which mitigates shifting and riding up of the holster when worn. My Gelco Classic Light 2.0 holster that I use for the G19, G45, and other comparable with Glock pistols also serves well for the G26. You may not wish to use the beaver tail grip extensions or magazine extensions as I have. Not using these devices slightly help in the concealment department, but their use I leave up to you. Personally, I will give up a slight disadvantage to concealment to the advantage of better control over the firearm that I carry. After effectively concealing a full-size 1911 for many years, concealing the Glock Gen5 G26 is very easy for me, and so much lighter than my usual EDC. Although some may feel that I'm giving the 9mm cartridge too much credit over the 45 ACP. Personally, I don't think that way anymore. Of the many choices of subcompact pistols available to me, whether already in my possession or not, the Glock Gen5 G26 seems to be a good choice for me and my purposes for it. The more that I handle Glock pistols, the more that I am becoming accustomed to them. As such, I have become a bit more adept and feel more comfortable with them. The Glock G26 is no exception. The Glock Gen5 G26 version has vast improvements over my previous Gen 3 Glock G26, and it is welcomed in the family for my purposes. Whether you are a Glock fanboy or not, the Glock Gen5 G26 has both likable and not so likable features, as with many handguns of this nature. As usual, in the final consensus, it is your choice to have and to hold one. For me, the Glock Gen5 G26 is a keeper. But the question still remains, is the Glock G26 still a viable defensive handgun, or should it be relegated to the dustbin? Here's a passing thought that I had. As with the G45, which is essentially a G19 slide on a G17 frame, why not a G26 slide on a G19 frame? It could be called the G26X, 15 plus 1 rounds in a 3.43-inch barreled handgun. But, then again, there is the Springfield Armory Hellcat Pro, with its very narrow 1-inch width, a 3.71-inch barrel, and a 15 plus 1 round capacity, and is lighter by 0.67 ounces unloaded. Pretty hard to argue with that, I would say. Some will find the G26 harder to wrap their hand around than compared to gripping the Hellcat Pro. I just hate to admit that I might be one of those saying, hey, you remember the time when the Glock G26 was the most popular subcompact pistol on the market? But I will tell you this, I won't be selling my G26 just because it is not popular anymore. After all, I am a dedicated introvert and I happen to like obscurity. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is the Glock G26 even worth looking at anymore? As always, thank you for watching and sharing this journey with me. More gun and gear reviews are in the mill, and I hope that you will return for them. In the meantime, stay safe out there.